Oh, her dulcet tone. I love her. She's the best. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian McKinney, and I am the comms person with Idaho Partners for Good. I appreciate you all taking the time this morning to jump on and participate with us and learn a little bit more about one of the areas of nonprofits that a lot of times I think a lot of us try and avoid. Or kind of put our hands over our ears and rock back and forth and hope that it all works out because we have good intentions, because as we know, a lot of times nonprofit leaders were really good at ideating and making things happen and starting something and creating a movement and getting people behind us. But the stuff, on the Excel sheet in the back and dotting the T's and crossing the I's, sometimes can be an area that we're not super great at. And we kind of neglect that sometimes. And a lot of times it's hesitation out of fear. We don't know what we don't know, and we don't want to sound stupid by asking those questions. But what we don't know about the super secret squirrel stuff, the wizardry, the bookkeeping and accounting, the back of house type of things can really make or break our nonprofits and our organizations. And in the end, if we're not having that back of house in order, it really starts to prevent the front of the house from being able to do what we do best, which is serve the people that we're out here doing the work for. So today we don't have not one, not two, but three of such wizards that are good at all of these magical, amazing mathematical things. And so I will have them introduce ourselves, and then we have some questions that we will go through. And then towards the end, if you have any questions specifically about your situation, or I have this friend, those type of questions, of course, too, then we can go to those. And then also, we can also, if we have time, have a little bit of a free discussion about some trends we're seeing, your common concerns that you see, ways, hacks, things to make this better. I just want it to be a magical mathematical moment for all of us. So Brandy, if you would like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you came into doing what you do and what you do.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. So I'm Brandy. I'm actually the treasurer for Idaho Partners for Good. But my day-to-day job is I'm a group accounting manager for Jatasa. And Jatasa is a bookkeeping and accounting firm that specializes in nonprofit bookkeeping and accounting. So I've been with Jatasa for almost 11 years now, which is wild to think. So I've been working in the nonprofit sector uh, that whole time. And like I said, we work exclusively with nonprofits, so that's our bread and butter. And really, we work closely with nonprofits so that you guys can really work, in the field of enhancing programs and working with your missions, and so that we can uh, work kind of in the back office of the financials, and that you guys can focus more on your missions and programs. So here to hopefully answer some questions that you may have today.
And how did you come into this field? What sparked you to go into this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, to be honest, it kind of fell into my lap, to be completely honest. But the more I've gotten into it, um, I've just loved it. And truthfully, I love just working with all of the different nonprofits and um, taking really just being like a very small piece of the puzzle of the work that they do, and just connecting with all of the different nonprofits that we work with. So it's really fun to be a little piece of the puzzle that they do. So yeah.
Thank you. All right, David, would you like to introduce yourself and what you do and what made you fall in love with it? Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm David Hagstrom. I'm a partner and founder at H&E Advisors. We are a CPA firm that specializes in attestation services. So that's your reviews, audits, compilations, and agreed upon procedures. We're a different kind of a unique CPA firm. The fact that that's our bread and butter, that's our specialty, is those attestation services. Most CPA firms, you think of, oh, there's tax work involved, or there's client accounting services. We don't do that. We kind of stress we are independent auditors. We don't do those services. And it is a little bit different, a little unique, but we've had a lot of fun growing this business, my partner and I. So a little bit, I've been in the accounting industry for about 15 years, and I've seen a lot of different industries. I started my career in actually private accounting, doing internal audit for it was Boise Cascade, and then it morphed into
Oh,
Packaging Corporate America during the buyout in 2013. And so I kind of got to see a lot of changes with, particularly with an SEC traded company. And I left and went to another firm, and I got to see even more industries. And I started doing audits for nonprofit organizations, and I just was really fascinated with it, just in the amount of variation that there is in regards to what nonprofits do, what industries they're involved in, the collection of individuals that are in this industry. I just kind of loved it. I was fascinated by it, and it just kind of kept me coming back. And so when my partner and I launched this firm, we really wanted to cater to nonprofit organizations and bringing them the level of service and expertise that they need, because it is such a unique field. It is such a unique industry that really needs specialists involved with it. So that's a little bit about my journey.
thank you, David. All right, Bryce, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what made you fall in love with magical mathematics.
Yeah, so Bryce Morrison with Blacksmith CPA. So I started this firm about 5 months ago, well, so far it's just me, and I specialize in nonprofit tax services. So before I started this firm, I was with a regional firm for over 6 years, and most of what I did there was in the nonprofit sector. And I was one of the only tax accountants there who actually enjoyed the work itself. And so naturally the partners came to me and asked me to kind of lead the nonprofit tax team at that firm. It's just most tax accountants just for whatever reason hate working, hate the nonprofit accounting itself, and can't wait to get away from it. And so for me, it was a good opportunity. It was kind of a good opportunity for me to develop a special skill. And then when it came time for I wanted to change as far as where I was at, and I realized this was a great opportunity for me to go and specialize in the nonprofit realm, just because of what I mentioned. Like most CPAs do not really like working with them, and so, but I mean, I love the work. I love working with the people themselves. Like generally speaking, I liked working with people in the nonprofit sector more than the for-profit sector. Just such great people, awesome missions, and so I just love all of that. And yeah, and so I really think what I bring to the table is the specialized expertise. Um, and I really do think I will bring, the value and the service that I wasn't able to at my previous firm to nonprofit clients. So yeah, I'm really excited to, become more visible to the nonprofit sector here in Idaho.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to get started with some pre-selected questions. We were chatting a little bit about if any of us could remember it was like the dating show or something in the 70s, and then you do bachelor number one, describe your perfect date. So we're going to do that kind of format with our incredible panelists today. So Brandy, I'm going to start off with you. And should do, what are the key financial reports or dashboards we should be tracking monthly?
Yes. I would say the key financial reports that you should look at each month would be your balance sheet, or the nonprofit term for it would be your statement of financial position, along with your profit and loss, or also known as your income statement. Um, Nonprofit term for that also would be your statement of financial activities. And then also if you have a budget, also super helpful to be looking at your budget. versus actuals on a monthly basis. And just really keeping it simple with those 2 reports, I would say is a great starting point. So I just keep it simple and start with that.
And if you don't have that yet, this is a good cue to do so.
Yes,
And I
yes.
also appreciate the, understanding the difference in language between profit and for-profit and, understanding what those nuances are.
Yes, yes. We like to make it complicated in the nonprofit world and
Mhm.
put our own naming convention on the report. So always like to give both terms of the reporting.
And Brandy,
Awesome.
I was gonna say Jatasa has like templates for all the different financial statements on the Jatasa website that people can reference, right?
Yeah, we do actually.
Yeah,
Yep.
so really good resource there.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. I don't think I knew that, and now I do. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm so glad we're all talking today.
Yeah.
All right, David, the next question is for you. What type of assurance engagement is right for my organization, and when should I hire a CPA to obtain this service? I.e., I'm assuming this is going to be a translation. When should a nonprofit get a formal audit versus a financial review or compilation?
Yeah. Now, can I break with a little bit? I know we're doing a panel, but I'd love to kind of get some. I'm looking at everybody on my screen. Does anyone here get an audit or review or compilation for your organization at this point in time? Like, if you do, okay, okay. So it doesn't look like
I'm
it.
on a board. I'm on a board with a couple that do. So
Okay. So I'll tell everybody, nobody gets an audit because they're looking to have a good time. That doesn't happen. That's just not the case. Typically with audits, it's regulatory, it's a requirement where you say, um, whether you're getting federal funding. Different laws have different regulation, or different states have different regulations about when you are required to obtain an audit. And so I would recommend, if anyone has activity like fundraising activities, or if you have if you're spending money in different states, you should probably compile and understand which states and which jurisdictions you're actually required to look at. I mean, for example, I have a lot of organizations that I do audits for in California, where they have a requirement that if you have over $2 million in public funding, you're required to obtain an audit. And then there's lower thresholds for reviews and compilations. But I would recommend that you look at those state regulations. And there's actually a really good tool on the nonprofit council, the National Council of Nonprofits, where there's an interactive map, and you can go in and say, well, what states do I have activity in? But yeah, so nobody gets an audit for fun. It's usually regulatory. Now, I will say I've got a number of clients that do get reviews and compilations where they're not necessarily required to do it. And it does foster stronger fiscal controls and financial governance when you have a process in place to obtain an independent either review or compilation. And those, I'm saying these words. Let me just back up because if you haven't ever gone through an audit or review or compilation, a lot of times people use these words interchangeably. And accountants, they mean very specific things. An audit is the highest level of assurance or attestation that you can receive from an accountant, from a CPA. Review is the step below that, and I kind of think of it like, if I'm auditing cash in your organization, I'm going to say, give me your bank statements, and I may send out bank confirmations as well. If I'm doing a review, I'm going to say, hey, give me your internally generated bank reconciliations. I don't necessarily need to see what's given by the bank. I need to see what you've done. And a compilation is below that, where an accountant will take your information and place it in financial statements that are prepared in accordance with GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles. So, there's a lot of different ways you can look at and slice and dice and say, well, do I need one yet? Do I need to have some kind of attestation practice? Maybe not. Maybe you don't. But one thing that I try to tell folks that, uh, to an accountant, to an auditor, a nail, it looks like a nail and you're kind of hammered. One thing that I would recommend is you look at your internal controls and policies. And that's one thing that we try to help our clients look at is, well, if you're not getting outside attestation or assurance on your financial information, are you generating that assurance of some type internally through board reviews or through your internal controls that you have in place? And what does that look like? How are you doing that? And one thing that we try to say is, well, if those traditional reviews, audits, or compilations, if that's not in your wheelhouse, if that's not necessary, well, we do agreed upon procedures where we come and say, what's the risk to your organization? And we can design an engagement that is very direct and very specific and personalized to your organization. So there's a lot of different tools around, what should you get, when should you get it. Obviously, if there's regulations, you have to get whatever level of assurance that is. One last thing before I stop talking, and I will stop talking. You need to be looking ahead and working with an accountant to say, well, when do I need to get an audit? Because if you need an audit in 2 months, you're not going to get an audit. It doesn't happen. You need to be looking down the road, and you need to be identifying certain benchmarks and certain activities where you say, you know what, we've hit a certain level of threshold, or we want to apply for a grant, or we've expanded into a state. Once you understand what those triggers are, and what benchmarks you're trying to hit, uh, you need to be then working backwards and saying, well, okay, then I need to get an audit, and you need to have an accountant in place at least 6 months before you need that audit issued.
Yeah,
So,
thank you so much for explaining those difference, right, between the audit review and compilation and what that looks like. And yeah, that's just fantastic to actually, I feel better as a board member. I'm like writing things down going, oh yeah, we do that. Apparently, well, that's an internal assure, so that's really awesome. Yeah, that helps all of us do better in all the different hats and all the different jobs and things that we have. So, Bryce, how do we know if our chart of accounts is set up correctly for nonprofit needs?
All right. Well, so I always say that getting your books in order, creating your books for organizations that's starting out is really the foundation of your accounting. So to me, it's really the first major step that an organization needs to have in place in order for an audit to ever happen and and for a tax return to be filed. So and Brandy is really, really deep into this work. So if she has anything to add, please add. But I'll say what kind of the things that I think are really important. So as far as setting up your chart of accounts, getting an account number convention in order, like having some sort of numbering order to be able to classify your accounts in different groups. Like commonly you'll see like assets in the 1000 groups, 1000, 1005, 1010, liabilities in the 2000 groups. I mean that's what I've seen a lot. So getting some sort of convention in place. Um, and then from there, try to set up your chart of accounts, how they would be reported, on financial statements or tax return. It'll be a little bit different between the two, but there's, big picture, they'll be pretty similar. So, assets in order of liquidity. So, cash and cash equivalents and short-term investments are going to be on the face of the financial statements, those are going to be the first assets listed. And then the longer term assets like fixed assets will be towards at the bottom. And then liabilities, it's, ordered by date of maturity. So the short term, accounts payable, those are always going to be at the top of the current liabilities and so forth. So setting up your chart of accounts will just make things so much smoother when it comes time for reporting. And and then I guess as far as tax reporting, labeling accounts to there's different types of revenue. Obviously, in a nonprofit, you're going to have individual donations, you're going to have grants, you might have program service revenue. Um, you know, cl group making groups and subgroups, putting those types of accounts together so that it's easier come time for reporting to be able when an accountant comes in, they can see where just finding things more easily. So those are kind of the big things that I think are really important when setting up your books and all that. But
Take the parking ticket or present credit card. Please take the parking ticket. Please enter following.
So I don't know, Brandy, did you have anything to add? You're way more expert on this part than I am.
Yeah, no, align with everything you said there, Bryce. We essentially follow the unified chart of accounts, which is like a nonprofit industry standard. So aligns with everything Bryce said there. The other thing I think that is super important is really just having a mechanism too to track your functional breakout. So having a clear to kind of break that down is having a clear way to track, your programmatic spending, your administrative spending and fundraising, so that your tax preparer like Bryce or whoever it may be has a really easy way to prepare your 990. Also, your auditor is going to want to look at that when they prepare your functional expense reporting with audit too. So
So Brandy, with that, usually what I see is in like if you're using QuickBooks, you can set up classes and
yep.
and so that's commonly what I'll see is there'll be a class for program and admin and fundraising and maybe subclasses for the different types of programs and all of that.
Yeah.
That's the main way that I've seen, but maybe of because I think some organizations might use classes for other things and then have to use a different mechanism for
Yeah.
allocating expenses, but maybe you can expand on that or if you
Um, yeah, I mean, there's different ways to to do it. Our standard way is to do classes as well or for the different functions. So, this is getting very advanced, but essentially having different tiers of tracking is the best way to break out um having kind of the different segments of tracking for your reporting. So having class tracking for your different functional breakouts, and then even the more complex you get, like to have different if you have like restricted grants, you want to have a different tier or segment to be able to track your grants, and that makes it easier for you to be able to have grant reporting and tracking. So things like that make it very, very easy to have it. But just kind of talking bare bones as Bryce was originally tracking, I think if you're looking to originally get your chart of accounts set up, I think a really great reference is the unified chart of accounts. So I would definitely check that out.
Sounds like a soccer team.
Yeah.
It does. Can I say one thing about the classes? It actually is a very important function for nonprofit organizations. One of the things that nonprofits will struggle with in an audit is the statement of functional expenses. It's a financial report that is specific to nonprofit organizations. If you're a for-profit or employee benefit plan or whatever it may be, you're not required to do that. Only nonprofit organizations have to compile and present a statement of functional expense. And basically what you're doing is you're presenting your programs if you have major programs, or you can present them all as one if they're all, if all of your program expenses related to basically one program. But then you also have to present your management and general expenses and your fundraising expenses. And this is something that donors are going to want to see as well.
Yeah.
It's not just a gap statement, although it is certainly that. But it really will. It's important information to say, hey, how are we allocating certain costs? One thing that comes to my mind is depreciation expense, for example. If you have depreciation expense, well, how much of that actually gets allocated to programs or management in general, fundraising? It's kind of an abstract thinking. And in fact, what you do in the GAAP financial statements is you have to come up with allocation methods for costs that are not directly attributable to those cost centers. And so again, it's a little bit tricky, but I would definitely urge, as you're setting up your trial balance, to make sure that you have classes, at least the bare bones minimum of tracking what's a program, what's management in general, and what's fundraising. If you do that, then you're going to be 90% of the way there when it comes time to obtain an audit or review or compilation, because you'll have that information readily available. And then it just comes down to some of those indirect costs of looking to allocate. But starting how you finish is a really important component of setting up these QuickBooks.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. All right, Brandy. Nope, I just asked you a question, didn't I? Yeah, okay.
Well,
So,
Bryce and I piggybacked.
yeah, I got lost in the sauce a little bit. So so I think I'm on to David now, right? And this is a little bit easier for me to understand. How do we set up internal controls if our staff is small and people wear multiple hats?
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about this question a little bit this morning, and you can say, I mean, there are literal volumes of books written about internal controls, right? I mean, there's just so much to be said. What I would say is the two biggest components that I would keep in my mind as you're designing internal controls is, one, remember it has to be a checks and balance type of thing. And if you're a small organization with not a lot of folks involved in the financial reporting process, or not a lot of folks that have oversight, you need to bring in some individuals either on the board level or volunteer level to even just do review, because it is all about chain of custody of who has access to financial assets and who has access to the reporting component, and keeping segregation of duties, aligned. Like, you don't want to have one individual and only one individual who has the ability to write checks or make purchases, make payments, and also is the person reconciling the books and nobody reviewing, right? Like, that's obviously a very bad situation. And we had an instance of this in our firm. There was a nonprofit organization this year that their executive director was, writing checks to her fiance for work that was never performed and things. And it happens. And so you have to have some level of oversight. Things have to be looked at and reviewed. You have to have a board member saying, hey, executive director, if you're the one writing checks, it's got to be at the board level that they're reviewing. You can't have, someone who's a part-time employee reviewing the checks and purchases of the executive director. That's not effective. That's not going to work. You need to look at the levels and who's got purchasing power, who's reconciling the books. The other thing that I would say is, I'm a huge proponent of using technology and using softwares in your internal controls, setting up, automated reviews, setting up rules within QuickBooks or rules within, whatever it may be, whatever systems you're using, or so that that, hey, certain individuals have access, certain individuals have read-only access or full access, whatever you're looking at. Using technological controls, I'm a huge proponent of, because it eliminates user judgment. Some people will be like, hey, these one-offs thing, we had an emergency and I couldn't do anything about this. I had to make it. Well, okay, yeah, there's one-off emergencies. They're not great for that, but you know what? 99% of the time, if you're not living in that headspace of, the house is on fire type of thing. So, and last thing, make sure your internal controls are specific to you. I've seen a lot of organizations type in, hey, Chat GPT, give me some, I'm a small nonprofit organization. What are some internal controls that I should be using? I think that's a great way to start, right? That's a great way to start, but that's not the way you want to end. You need to then personalize those things for your organization.
All right, thank you so much. All right. Yes, having a second set of eyes, and sometimes even the third set of eyes, there'll be situations where someone, how could it go on this long? Because we stay in our little silos and we're not always necessarily, overseeing everyone else's work. And yeah, so having that automated, and that makes it impartial, right? So it makes it objective. So there isn't, oh, well, you're asking me this because you have it out for me, or, something, just having it be emotional, yeah, and is better for morale, definitely.
Yeah.
Right? What are the top compliance issues that nonprofits get into trouble with the IRS or state regulators?
Okay, so I'm gonna go through the reserve. So the first one is it's pretty and right at the start they have to application form 1023 23. They miss.
I've
Oh,
been
there
on
you
a
go.
board and seen that happen.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
it quite common, unfortunately, and so some sort of mistake was made in the application. Made it's also possible just straight up screwed up. That's very possible. I mean, but it definitely does happen where the organization might fill out the application wrong. So I would say even for even just setting in the nonprofit the exempt application, it is if you don't have experience with that application form already, it's a very worthy investment to reach out to a CPA who has experience with it, just for peace of mind, to make sure that you're filling it out incorrectly, because to get your organization reclassified from a private foundation back to a public charity is a big headache. And I'm dealing with one or two right now that the expected time frame once we send in the correct paperwork to get it is like 8 months. That's an estimate. It's like who knows what's going to happen. So,
Bryce, you might have a new client. By the way, I'm Julie, and you
oh,
might
hi, Julie.
I did that wrong, and I need to figure out how to reclassify. So
Okay, let's talk.
Fantastic.
So yeah, big headache. So just right at the front, that's something I would highly recommend is getting a CPA and make sure you get that filled out correctly. Second big item that I wanted to discuss is late filing penalties. So most organizations don't have to pay income tax, as they're exempt. They may if they have unrelated business income, but most organizations don't, or not wouldn't have very much. The late filing penalties are pretty significant. If you don't file an extension and you don't file by the initial deadline, you will get a letter. There's no escaping it. If you file an extension and miss the extension deadline, you will get a letter. And so just being aware of the deadlines, making sure your CPA doesn't miss you. I had an organization that reached out to me a few months ago that somehow their CPA they completely lost track of the project, and they had filed an extension and they still missed the extension deadline. So be in constant communication with your tax accountant, but there are penalty relief letters that we can send if you get a penalty, but those are like that's a for you will always get a letter if you miss the deadline, and the penalties are significant, so it's better obviously to avoid them, to avoid the headache of trying to get the penalty abated. And then another one wanted to talk about was the allocation of expenses, which Randy had brought up a little bit ago. I've seen a lot of organizations allocate 100% of their expenses to program, and that's a red flag. Like that's almost always never the case. You're always going to have some administrative expenses, and probably some fundraising expenses. So putting all of it to program is just a red flag to the IRS. And if you're not sure how to how to allocate, talk to Brandy, or some about methodologies for allocating, and all of that. But that's a big red flag. Unrelated business income. So if you I actually just had an experience with a client that their prior CPA had reported unrelated business income on their tax return over the $1,000 threshold, and they didn't file the Form 990T, which that form is required, if you're over that threshold. And so nothing will trigger a letter faster than reporting unrelated business income and not filing the required return and paying income tax on it. In this particular case, it was not even correctly reported. It shouldn't have been unrelated business income, but anyways, so reporting it incorrectly or reporting it and not filing the required return is big issue. I don't know how often that happens, but I've personally seen it, so I wanted to bring that up. One last thing I wanted to bring up is the state sales tax exemption. Different states have different laws. So if you're making so if a nonprofit is making purchases in Idaho, um, most organizations are qualified for the exemption, but you need to, there's a form, the form ST 101, that you need to provide to each seller that you do business with. So if you don't do that form, then you are not exempt from paying sales tax for that particular seller. So if you're unsure if you've done that, or talk to a tax accountant to help you figure that out. But that's, obviously sales tax exemption is a big thing, and it, like I said, it varies state by state. So it's really important to keep in mind. But yeah, those are the major items that I wanted to discuss.
Awesome. I was going to suggest, I hope it's in a 1, 2, like the countdowns on YouTube, 5 things you didn't know that could hurt your nonprofit. Yeah. So that was epic and awesome. I love it. That was perfect. Exactly how I was hoping it was going to go. So, Brandy, how do we measure and show the financial health of our organization to stakeholders? And this is cool because we kind of went over this the other day in our board meeting. So.
Yeah. We've actually been talking about this a lot within our own board at Idaho Partners for Good. So a couple different things that you could look at, but what I would say would be like liquidity. So looking at just months of cash on hand. So looking at really your unrestricted cash. So obviously within nonprofits, a lot of times you have restricted cash. So you don't want to look at total cash, just your unrestricted cash. So taking your unrestricted cash and seeing what your unrestricted cash on hand is, and wanting to have typically, I would say, like 3 to 6 months of cash on hand. Another thing would be potentially looking at just like sustainability, and even like revenue diversity is a big thing that we've been talking about, even like at Jatasa right now, with just um, the political climate, to be honest, and having various revenue streams. You don't really want to have just one source of revenue. So having, different percentage of revenue streams. So, having grants, donations, having earned revenue, potentially having revenue from events, or having a fundraising event, whatever it may be, that can help in just potentially being a little bit more sustainable and not having all of your eggs in one basket, essentially. Um, but what Brian was kind of talking about is within our own board is we've kind of moved to also having a visual dashboard where we've showed really kind of some different visual trends of just like our monthly revenue, monthly expenses, our burn rate, our efficiency rating, things like that have really kind of just helped show us and our board things in a different way instead of being so into the numbers where not all of us read um, Excel financials like maybe myself, Bryce, or David may, because it is a lot to digest if you're not used to it. So having just like one visual snapshot, I think has been very helpful. So yeah.
Fantastic. So, David and Bryce, since you guys both picked the same Smarty Smart question, you guys can kind of, frick and frack, off of this a little bit and kind of give your smarty take on it. So, how do we make the case to funders for investing in our overhead in financial management?
Yeah. And I will be brief so that Bryce can speak as well. And then I'll be brief so that I can hear from folks here if they have questions, because I do want to get to this.
Mhm.
But I think, when it comes to making the case for how do you invest in overhead and financial management and the other administrative components of your organization, there's kind of this long-standing belief in the funders world that low overhead equals an efficient nonprofit. And like, that's just not necessarily true. Like it's doesn't necessarily mean that. In reality, it could be starving the infrastructure of the organization, like, and ultimately, if you're not investing, helping funders understand that investing in the financial management administrative component of the organization, like it's mission critical, and funders need to see that uh, investing in those areas of the business, because it is a business, they should see it as protecting their investment in the nonprofit's work. Helping them see that is a very difficult component. And what I try to tell my clients that are uh, getting audits, getting reviews, I say, look, these financial statements are seen through the lens of GAAP, through generally accepted accounting principles.
Mhm.
That's not necessarily always productive to lenders, and helping them see that, you know, when you give them these financial statements, if they're asking for it, you need to also be giving them an executive summary of like what those funds in management in general and in fundraising, what those investments are actually providing, bottom line
Mhm.
programs. Provide some color on these GAAP financial statements. Like, they shouldn't just stand alone. They should be here's the auditor's report, and here's our summary, like about where we are at financially, what we're doing. Because that's not something that accountants or auditors do. So providing some clarity and some color into what is actually going on within the organization.
Awesome.
Yeah, so a couple quick things. I think like just high level, when you invest in experts outside of your organization, it lets those in the organization really focus on the mission rather than them trying to figure out the financials themselves and take all that time. Um, Investing in good financial experts, will prevent any legal and compliance issues. You can, avoid all of that. And then, related to like what David was talking about with efficiency, I think, there's a big, I don't know, misunderstanding, like, that efficient, like between efficiency and impact. And and I'll put this in the chat, but there's an individual named Dan Paletta who did a TED talk that was pretty well known, and then he helped make this movie called Uncharitable, and his he gives an example. I don't remember the exact numbers he uses, but he says, if an organization receives $100, um, and $95 of that goes directly to the program, okay, that's efficient, but the total impact is minimal. If an organization gets $1,000 and $700 of it goes to the program and 300 goes to overhead in order to have a greater total impact, that's ultimately what you know a nonprofit hopes to accomplish, is a greater impact more than just efficiency. So you want to be efficient with the funds that you receive, but um, using it on overhead, and which includes financial experts and all of that, that will help with the total impact. And so like what David was saying, like they're also providing some sort of executive summary, or that there's organizations out there that help with what they call impact reporting, um, which a lot of organizations have an annual report, but are you clearly demonstrating the impact that your organization is having on your community, state, and all of that. So I guess that's what I think it's important to show potential funders, is the level of impact that you are having and can have based on projected funding and all of that. So that's what I got.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, there's only ideally there would be all of us running around needing no income whatsoever and could dedicate 60 to hours a week, and 100% of all donations could go to what we're doing. But yeah, it's I can see from the funders' perspective, but then also actually doing the work, of being able to do the work and do it well and do it appropriately and do it accurately, and being able to, as you both said, have an impact versus how little did you eat today and stay upright. So I think that's really important to talk about. I would like to open it up now to questions. Julie, since you spoke up and I saw you doing this, I'll go ahead and start with you, and then we'll just kind of go through who has some questions for our CPAs.
Sure. Perfect. So my name is Julie Black Henry. I started a nonprofit with my business partner, Jennifer Poole. Our company is called, we each have kind of some individual things, but the nonprofit itself is called Idaho Mediation and Resolution Center. So it's really for the conflict resolution side of things, mediation. Our goal is for the nonprofit side. We've been working a lot with the women's prison. And so that is to bring the kiddos or parents, most specifically mamas at this point in time, that when they come out of the system, that we can get them some resources to help them get some custody back for their kiddos, kind of the main goal right now. In addition, do a lot of training for, in the criminal justice side of things, for police departments, fire departments, things like that, on restorative justice, communication skills, things like that. So we started this, I believe I'll have to look at my paper. It was like last year, and nope, in 2023, I apologize. Started in September, I filed the papers with the IRS. For whatever reason, and it's funny that you said this, Bryce, because I swore up and down I clicked the right button, whatever. But whatever reason, we're classified as a private foundation, and I believe that we have to be a charitable foundation. I don't know. So please help. I need your number. So what happened is that I had spoke to, since September of 2023, when we filed this, and I have my little paper, we've not received any donations. We've not received anything yet. We haven't done any grants. It kind of was a slow roll. But I talked to an accountant that was doing my LLC things, or taxes, and she had said, wait, you're listed as a private, you need to be a charitable, and you need to get this fixed ASAP. And by the way, have you not filed your forms? And I'm like, girl, I'm in so much trouble right now. So the IRS can come take my Honda CRV, fine, whatever. Anyway, at this point, so that's what I need help with, Bryce, is my side is I need to change this foundation from private to charitable. And then I probably need to figure out that letter you mentioned about the forgiving of the penalties or whatnot. I don't know.
Have you gotten any letters, like penalty letters? Okay.
We haven't seen anything at all from the IRS. The only thing I have is the lovely letter that says you have an employee ID number, and that's it, and that you're a 501c3 private. So,
Well, let's set up a time to talk, and we can talk more
Yep.
in detail.
yeah, for
Perfect.
sure. I would really appreciate it. Can I get your phone number, or are you on the
Yeah, I'll
web?
put it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. So that's pretty much it. My goal today to come is to listen to this, which I'd love to continue to join because this is a lot of good information. Was really just to find out how I could get involved with an accountant that does these nonprofits specifically. So
There you go.
yeah, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Julie.
I may have to bolt out. I do have a mediation at 10:30, but in the meantime,
We're
cool.
so happy that you could join us. That's what these are here for, is to
Yeah.
connect people with people that know things.
And you guys can do the same for me. If anybody has any questions about mediation, I'll throw some information in there in the chat. If anybody runs across anybody that
Yeah.
needs mediation, family loss issues, custody, divorce, any type of restorative justice for that side, or even your own businesses. Sometimes we need a little reminder of how this works. So let me know.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Appreciate it. Does anyone else have any questions for our CPAs? You can put it in the chat if you're shy, or you can come off mute and speak, or
Can I say one thing while people are? Oh, I'm sorry.
Marnie, did you have a question, Marnie?
I do, but
Awesome.
David, feel free to.
Oh, go ahead.
We're here for you.
So this is our CPAs, I think, are of the sort that don't really relish nonprofit account managing, is my suspicion. And my question involves Idaho unemployment insurance tax reporting. They, in their work for us, they say that our account has a 0% tax rate. And so my question is that really true for a small nonprofit to have a 0% unemployment insurance tax rate? If any of you have an answer to that, I would appreciate it.
I think while Bryce is thinking about that, I just wanted to say one thing, and Marty kind of preempted, you kind of went along with what Julie was saying. There are a lot of really fantastic CPA firms out there. But the compliance component that sits around accounting now and just tax standards, financial reporting standards, they have gotten so complex that you need to be able to have a CPA that specializes in nonprofit organizations. Like I kind of say, like you can't dabble in this anymore. 20 years ago, a CPA could say, hey, I do tax and I do audit for every industry under the sun. That's just not possible anymore. It's way too complex. You need to find a CPA that specializes in, like I said, nonprofit organizations. And here's kind of a peek behind the curtain. Part of the reason that a lot of CPA firms don't want to take on nonprofit organizations, particularly for tax, is because the margins that most CPA firms get are from tax planning. And so you see where there's kind of a divergence here. Mm-hmm. There is no tax planning for nonprofit organizations. So there's an issue there, and it makes it very difficult where, hey, if the margins just aren't there for this industry, but you're doing both nonprofit and you're doing for-profit organizations, something's going to give. And a lot of times these firms will say, Don't worry about the low margin clients, focus on the high margin. And so then things like this crop up, and the education, the continuing education just doesn't sit with the nonprofit organization. So make sure you have a nonprofit specific CPA. Sorry, I'll stop talking and let Bryce.
Yeah. So Marty, I'm actually not 100% sure on that question off the top of my head, but if you're okay with it, I'll do a little research and I can let you know what I find.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Marnie, would you like to put your contact info in the chat for Bryce?
Sure. Sure. Thank you.
Well, I don't know what to say about we can't dabble in nonprofitry anymore. There will be no dabbling.
That's right.
No dilly-dallying. No, yes, yeah. There's well, yeah. Okay, so did anyone else have any other questions for our CPAs? So if you all had just one parting shot, just one final, words of advice for nonprofits, and something even for those of us that have been here today to take to their other nonprofit friends and share, because again, that's what we want to spread awareness. We want to invite, we want to include, we want to create community in these nonprofit spaces so that we can all do more of what we do best. What would be one final word of advice that you could give?
I'll start. I really appreciate how you guys put this together with 3 different experts, where we say someone's in audit, someone is in bookkeeping and financial reporting, and someone is in tax. The fact is, these things all build on each other. And it really does start with a strong bookkeeping, a strong financial reporting process. And if you guys aren't talking in your board meetings regularly about what are our processes, what do our chart of accounts look like, where are we mapping things to, you probably need to do that. and if you don't feel like you have the expertise to do that, then you need to bring somebody in to help you with that. I mean, you're either going to have really difficulties early on that you can kind of hurdle, and or they're going to be exponentially larger if you push them aside and push through and don't deal with making sure that your chart of accounts and your bookkeeping is set up correctly from the beginning.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Randy or Bryce?
I was just gonna say, I think that I, I understand, like, a lot of nonprofits, especially the smaller ones, cash is hard to come by, and funding, especially right now, is kind of hard to come by. But you know, investing in good financial services is a very worthy investment. Going the cheapest route possible, a lot of times will honestly do more harm than good. And finding a financial service expert who has experience and specializes in the nonprofit sector, and who's going to bring that quality of work and good service and all of that, I think will give you a really good return on that investment, and will ultimately, like, help your organization fulfill its mission more than going the cheaper route, many times at least. So
Letting team soft skills run the finances. Yeah. Brandy?
Yeah, agree. I think we're all saying the same thing. Nonprofits truly are unique in the financial reporting requirements are just very unique and different. So if you don't have that expert, I think things can go haywire very quickly. So just ensuring that you do have the expert and someone that you trust, I think it is important to have that sooner rather than later, just because You can also grow really quickly. So if you don't have that foundation in the beginning, things can get messy quickly. So.
All right. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you. I'm surprised with me talking, it only went 2 minutes over, so we're all doing very well. We will put the recording of this on our YouTube channel that you can find on YouTube or on our website. And then we have these nonprofit success labs every month. So we have another one coming up in October. And they'll be on our website, and we'll send out emails and everything else that we do about that this will be available for everyone. Thank you all so much for taking the time today, to work on your nonprofits and work on your business, and to, again, connect and invite and share and include as many people as you could today. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank you,
wonderful day.
Brianne.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks.
Bye.